All right, buckle up for a deep dive into a story that's, well, it's got a little bit of everything, really. Shipwrecks, vintage arcade games, we got some legal battles, even a little bit of a rescue mission thrown in for
Yeah.
good measure.
Oh, yeah, it's got it all, doesn't it?
We're talking about the Duke of Lancaster, a ship with a history as colorful as as those pixelated screens on the arcade cabinets it hid for decades.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a story that really grabs you, you know? This big, grand old ship, a symbol of luxury back in the day, ends up, what, beached on the Welsh coast?
Exactly, and all those games just sitting there untouched, a real-time capsule of 80s gaming.
Totally.
So anyone out there who hasn't heard about the Duke, let's set the stage a little bit. Built back in '56, started out as a luxury passenger ferry, did cruises too, sailing between Ireland, Scotland, all over Europe.
Oh, I can picture it.
Right. Passengers in their fancy clothes, being served on silver platters, maybe even a little ballroom dancing, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, a far cry from its later life as the fun ship, wouldn't you say?
Oh, right.
After it was converted to a car ferry in the 70s and then retired in 78, it was pretty much destined for scrap. Then, out of nowhere, someone gets this vision. A pretty wild one, if you ask me. They decide to turn this retired ship into, get this, an entertainment destination.
And that's where the arcade comes in, right?
That's it. They filled the car deck with all these classic arcade machines. I mean, can you imagine it? Stepping off a ship and right into a gamer's paradise.
Must have been something else. Real blend of, like, maritime history and that classic arcade nostalgia.
I would have loved to see it in its prime.
Mm.
But, as you can probably guess, the fun ship didn't exactly sail smoothly forever.
Yeah, sadly, the arcade's golden age was cut short. They had legal trouble with the local council, forced it to close down in the mid-'80s. And the Duke, left abandoned, rusting away on the coast. And with it, this incredible arcade, untouched for decades, just waiting to be rediscovered.
And that's exactly what happened in 2009 when a group of, I guess you could call them urban explorers, stumbled across this gold mine of gaming history.
Talk about a time capsule.
Right. Their photos showing rows of cabinets, Galaxian Space Invaders, even a rare Irish edition of Subs, it spread like wildfire through the arcade community.
And we're not just talking about any old machines here, right? These are the classics. Some of them in surprisingly good condition, too, after all that time.
That's right. Like they were frozen in time, just waiting for someone to come along, drop in a coin, and bring them back to life.
It's almost poetic. And that's where Oliver Moazezi comes in, right?
Yeah, a dedicated collector. He saw those pictures and he knew he had to do something. I mean, just picture it. 8 months tracking down the owner of this ship, legal hurdles, all for the love of these old games.
Talk about dedication. And it paid off,
Yeah.
right? He finally got access to that arcade in 2011. What was that like? Actually stepping onto the ship, knowing what's inside?
Well, it was a real mix of emotions, to be honest. Excitement, of course. Over 50 vintage machines, some in pretty decent shape. It was amazing to see. But there was also a bit of I guess you could say, concern. Yeah, the years hadn't been kind to all of them. Some had water damage from leaky windows. Turns out, some copper thieves had been at it. Which just goes to show you the challenges of trying to preserve history, even when it's right there in front of you.
So a mixed bag then, but with way too much potential to just ignore it. I bet there was a lot of anticipation, Oliver and his team getting ready to extract these cabinets, knowing they were saving a piece of gaming history from, well, basically a watery grave.
Absolutely, and they were under a lot of pressure, too. See, the ship's owner, now knowing the value of his unexpected treasure, he drove a hard bargain.
Oh, I bet he did.
In the end, they struck a deal, but with a catch. They had just 10 days to get all the machines off the ship. Talk about a race against time.
10 days, over 50 arcade cabinets, and well, let's just say a less than ideal location. I can't even imagine the logistics of that. What did that rescue mission actually look like?
Picture this, it's like something straight out of an action movie.
Okay, I'm listening.
But instead of bags of cash or stolen jewels, they're hauling out these big, bulky arcade cabinets. They had a team of 12 collectors, vans, cranes, the whole shebang.
Oh, I bet there were some close calls trying to get those things through tight spaces, rusty doorways. Had to be quite a sight.
Oh, absolutely. And luckily, they documented the whole thing, photos, videos, really captured the energy of it all, this arcade raid, as some people call it.
I love that.
You can really feel the excitement, the tension, winching these machines out of the ship, sunlight hitting those screens for the first time in, 30 years. It's like watching history being rescued right in front of your eyes.
I gotta say, I'm picturing Indiana Jones, but instead of the Ark of the Covenant, he's going after a Donkey Kong cabinet. So they managed to pull it off, save these machines from, what, a watery end, I guess? But then what? What happened to the games after they got them off the ship?
Well, some of them were in pretty good shape, all things considered, a little bit of TLC, and they were good to go. But others, especially the ones with water damage, those needed a lot of work, real restoration. It just goes to show the dedication of these collectors putting in the time and effort to bring these pieces of gaming history back to life.
That's incredible. So they weren't just salvaged, they were brought back to their, what, former glory. So where are they now? Are they in a museum somewhere? Private collections? Did they maybe even manage to revive that whole fun ship arcade idea?
Well, the Duke of Lancaster is still beached in North Wales, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, there's been different plans over the years, people talking about turning it into an art gallery, maybe a tourist attraction, but nothing's really happened yet.
Huh. So it's like the ship itself is waiting for its own second act.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But the games, the rescued ones, a lot of them are with private collectors now. Prized possessions, meticulously cared for. Think about it. Every time someone plays one of these machines, pushes a button, moves the joystick, it's like a direct connection to that time, that era of gaming, a real tangible link to the past.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it. So these machines that were almost lost forever, they're now helping to preserve gaming history. It really shows that even when things look, kind of bleak, there's always a chance for a comeback.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just about the objects themselves, right? It's about the stories they tell, the memories they bring back, the whole cultural legacy. These machines are more than just relics. They're like portals to a time when arcades were the place to be. Gaming was this shared social experience.
It's easy to forget about that these days with online gaming and virtual reality and all that.
Right. Back then, it was all about meeting up at the arcade, crowding around your favorite machine, sharing tips, celebrating those high scores.
Exactly. Good times.
And those experiences, those memories, they're part of history too.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we preserve that, the intangible stuff, the feelings, the connections, the impact that goes beyond the physical objects themselves.
That's a really good point. We tend to focus on saving the things we can hold in our hands, the tangible stuff. But what about the stories, the sense of community, the laughter? How do we make sure that those parts of history don't fade away?
Yeah, it's a tough question for sure. But maybe it starts with simply recognizing how important those things are. Understanding that history isn't just about artifacts. It's about the human experience, the connections we make, and the impact those connections have on our culture.
I like that. And, it makes you wonder, what else is out there? What's hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered? Yeah, it really does make you think. What's hiding in your own attic, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe tucked away in some dusty corner at your local antique shop. What seemingly ordinary thing in your life might have a whole, secret history behind it. The story of the Duke of Lancaster and its arcade, I think it shows us that history isn't just found in museums or textbooks. It's all around us if we know where to look.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding these hidden gems, right? It's about understanding why they matter. The craftsmanship, the artistry, the whole context that brought them into being, like with the Duke's arcade machines, they're a real testament to a time when gaming was, it was a social thing, something that brought people together.
It's easy to forget about that now, in the age of online gaming and virtual reality.
Oh, yeah, totally. Back then, you went to the arcade, waited your turn at the machine, shared tips and tricks, celebrated the wins together.
Yeah, there was a real sense of community there.
Absolutely. And those shared experiences, the memories, the whole atmosphere, that's all part of the story too, right? Part of what these machines represent. It makes you think about how we preserve that. The intangible stuff, the feelings, the social connections, the cultural impact that goes beyond the physical objects.
That's a really interesting thought. We're so focused on preserving the things we can touch, But what about the stories, the laughter, the energy of that time? How do we make sure that those parts of history don't just disappear?
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? But maybe it starts with just, I don't know, acknowledging that it's important, recognizing that history isn't just about stuff. It's about the human experience, right? The connections we make with each other and how those connections shape our culture.
I like that. Well said. Now, before we wrap things up, I got to ask you a fun one. If you could travel back in time, right? Go to the Duke of Lancaster's arcade in its prime. What game would you be making a beeline for?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So many great choices. Maybe a round of Galaga, or you know what? Maybe Defender.
Yeah.
Especially knowing how rare that cabinet is now. But honestly, I think the coolest part wouldn't just be the game itself. It would be, just being there, stepping onto that ship, feeling the energy of the arcade, being a part of that moment in time.
I totally get that feeling of stepping back in time, experiencing another era firsthand. It's a pretty powerful thing. It reminds us that history isn't just something in a book, it's something we can actually connect with,
Yeah.
on a personal level. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Duke of Lancaster, and it's amazing arcade treasure. We hope you enjoyed the journey.
We hope it inspires you to take a closer look at the world around you. You never know, you might stumble upon your own hidden piece of history.
And who knows what stories are out there just waiting to be discovered. Keep exploring, stay curious, and maybe, just maybe, you'll uncover a hidden treasure of your own.